Moritz, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello everyone, nice to meet you here. I have some piece of information for you. If you want to ask our guest, I will give you a microphone because we have a video shooting there. And if you will ask our guest, please do it in English, okay? Okay, thank you. So join me in welcoming our guest, Moritz.
So, welcome everyone for my talk. This was discussed on how we create great open source communities for every customer of open source. So, this was very important for distributions are very important for Drupal, and it makes life easier for developers as they give certain framework for projects, and it's here. As in things, there's like this 80-20 rule where the first 80%, especially with the distributions, are very easy to set up and are very smooth, but the last 20% can be like a real hassle and a real issue for the teams and for the companies. And so 20% are actually crucial in making a project a success, because every client is different and every project is different, and the needs for every community are very specific, and you need to adapt to the specifics. So, there are certain boundaries where you can stretch or bend a distribution before it breaks, and I want to give some guidelines at your hand so that your next project with OpenSocial, I hope with any distribution, becomes a success. For a bit over me, so I'm Moritz Arendt. I'm a Scrum Master, GoGorilla Project Manager for OpenSocial Enterprise team. I have a psychology background, and I also will try to incorporate all of those three components in the talk and give a bit insight from all the perspectives here. I already worked since 3 years on OpenSocial, customizing the core distribution for enterprises and making like their bespoke communities. So also a bit background on OpenSocial. So as the most of the talk will be over OpenSocial, I'll give you some information like how we came to make the distribution. So we had a Greenpeace project called Greenwire, where we did launch a very successful Netherlands version first, and then a international version, and from there we got a lot of requests if we can replicate this. And this is obviously like a lot of effort, years of development invested in it. So the answer was usually like no. But we wanted to, and we saw a market there, and we wanted to have a also for Drupal 8 a distribution that focuses on a framework for communities. So that's basically what we did. We set up OpenSocial as this distribution for communities, to set up communities within a certain framework. And so I don't think I have the time to show the features here, the feature video. But basically how you can imagine it, there's like a short screenshot. I'm going to show more of the features of the modules we use and a bit insights about the community later on. But in general, you can imagine it as like a standard social media platform or community platform where you can create a profile, where you can have streams, groups, topics, events, and where people can connect and communicate with each other. So our background from our customers is very diverse. So we have NGOs, we have organizations, we have government organizations, intranets, and external platforms, marketing platforms where companies use this to create a brand, to create a community around certain products. And so from those experiences, we actually started out with a very tight community platform and expanded into those different verticals, where we'll also explain a bit more later. So what will we cover today? I already quickly touched on it. So we will see how to set up an online community for success, how to set up projects for success. So I also will go a bit into the project management details of this, and then I will show some specific projects where we implemented this, and show also how the basics that we learned over the years and over the first two topics where we actually applied them. So to determine like how to set up a community for success, first off you have to determine like what is a successful community and what makes a great community. I think it's like a very complex topic where you could have like a own talk about it, but to summarize it a bit for us, what we see is that engagement is very, very important, that ease of use is very important, the access to the right features at the right time, which is very important, the right time is very important here, and that they have valuable content. Especially the last one is a bit tricky because it's usually in the hands of your client and not so much as you, but I also will touch this a bit on this a bit later, how you can, as a tech provider, enable your client to create valuable content. So I think the most important part is the community itself, that the community is at its core, and that's also how we build OpenSocial. So for us, the most important part was to connect people. So first off, we wanted, in every feature we build, we want to have the community as its core and the connection between those people at its core. And the relevant content in the right context is also very important for us. So show valuable content for users when they search it and where they search it. And another point that is very important is that you give a clear path and a clear action for the users. So oftentimes you see, especially in like flatter platforms, it's way easier. You have a menu structure, you show a few CTAs and a contact form or something. A community is way complexer. So, but still you need to have a structure. You need to have guided path down in the community so that users find through several steps the right way to interact and also the right places to interact with the rest of the community. To reach that, it's actually like something else is also needed. The engagement part is very important. So we use this hooked model. It's a model from an economical behaviorist, and it's based on 4 different repeating cycles. So it's a trigger, action, reward, and investment. It's very interesting if you are working with communities, if you're working with any product where engagement is relevant. I can really suggest that, and it's super interesting. It's a super interesting read. So the trigger and the action is that are triggered and to perform a certain action. As I said, like clear pathways, clear call to actions that trigger a certain action on the platform, that give a reward then because somebody else is, for example, liking your content that you posted or something. That is the reward. And it gives a certain investment to come back to the platform. And this is then a repeating cycle. So more to that in a second. So the question how we set up our community distribution for success is, I want to look at in this part a bit on how we do it in the practice. And one of the biggest problems here is the trade-off between flexibility and streamlinedness. So obviously you want to have a wide array of tools. You want to have that your client can do everything he wants, but you also don't want to overburden the community. You want to have the right features, you want to have interesting features, and you want those features to be compact and precise. So this is actually also still the core of everything that we decide. So as I said, we went like way broader than we started, as our client base is broad and our client base is so diverse in what they want to achieve with their community. We developed a huge amount of features that we actually don't always use in the core of the distribution, or not to the full extent, because for us, in a decision to take a feature into the core distribution does it deliver at any time value to any client, to any different community? So that is a very important aspect for us that still guides our decision process if we take a feature into the community or not. So I'm gonna show like 2 examples here of this streamlinedness versus flexibility. And the first one is the notifications. So this comes also back to the hook model, because it's a very important feature, right? It gives you the constant engagement that you want to have on a community, that makes a great community, that people come back, that they are informed, that they are, as I said, guided to the right content at the right moment. And so we set it up in a way so it's that we have 3 different notifications. So we have email notifications, we have notifications within the system, and we have notifications on the stream. So on an activity stream, which are technically also sort of notifications. This is, so we started with a very simple setup where we set on those 3 places notification only for creating content, only when new content is created, because that is like one of the most important triggers, and then later on added for likes, for example. So all of those direct rewards, to come back to the hook model, we created like notifications for us so that people get actually the reward of the action and come back with the investment they made. But we also see that a lot of, because the notifications are very much tied to how you use a community and how the specifics of a community are set up and the goals of this community, it might be that creating content is not that relevant because not much new content is created. But it could be, for example, that it's a discussion platform, so you want to have notifications for every comment made, or you want to have notifications for events created or for people who enroll to your events, if that is the focus. So what we did is we built like a very variable sandbox system where you can, based on certain variables, so on the where, when, and how, you can create basically any notification with any trigger and any place in the system. So that is obviously like for the developer only, but that's also the intention behind it for a distribution, right? That a developer can grab it, as I said, have an 80% complete system, so he has a working notification module, and then can modify it the last 20% with of the system so that it works precisely to his use case. Another point what this cannot be underestimated is the agency of the user itself, so that he or she can then actually set also within those features what preferences he or she has, so that there are, for example, that you can say, I only want to get notification once a day, once a week, or something like this. So also the agency of the user is very important in the flexibility versus streamlinedness. So this is, for example, also, this is now an example so that you can have a bit of an image where it's, say, email notifications, what I'm talking about. Again, here is a few elements of the important pieces I mentioned before. So very important, clear call to action, context for the user, again, context for the user, the who and where for the user. So we try to really implement the design principles I mentioned before. Second example is the events, because also there you can see how we started out with a very simple core, and it still is. In its core, the event feature does give you it's a node. Basically, you can everyone at the community can create, and on this node there can be set a time, a place, and it enables people to enroll to an event. That's it. What it does. You have your own overview about it. You see your events on your own profile, but further it doesn't do that much. So, but it covers the core of it. Now there could be the cases where the community is focused around those events, so you need way more specifics for that. So you maybe need a restriction for who can enroll because it's paid events, or there aren't actually physical events. That's something we learned also through the practice. So what we saw over the course of our development time is that actually how you envision it oftentimes as a developer doesn't match as real life use cases. So that's also why we try to keep it simple, to keep it tight in the distribution, so that we can actually expand on it later when we see how it is actually used on different communities. And there, for example, the are not physical events where you can enroll to, led us to the decision that, for example, Site Manager can now remove the enrollment feature, and it's only an event. It's more like a flyer than anything else. Or that you can set a maximum enrollment if it's actually a physical event where only 20 people can come. Also, you can do this on a site manager level, so you can set it as a site manager on a very top level of the community, so that you can set the boundaries within your communities and what is possible in the community. But also, again, the logged-in user itself can set this on his own event, so that the specifics of every event fit to the use case for the whole community, but also for the specific user itself. So this way we can create specific experiences for specific cases, as I said, which we experience as like the most important part, that you can really fit those details to the cases of that users have. So again, pictures so that you can imagine like how it works on OpenSocial. So you see the menus here on top. You see the enroll button. You see how much people have enrolled, and you see who created it. Under it, what you cannot see here is there's a comment stream and a quick description, a body text about what you can actually do on this event. Let me go forward to how to set up a distro project. I think it's true for the most projects, and some very important lessons here we learned are the setup is key, especially for distribution, because you have this, as I said, you have this framework in which you have to work, and it's also something that we learned is very hard to communicate actually to your clients. But it's very important that they understand how you're working with, and that you're transparent about how you work with it. So a winning project starts already with the sale, so that you actually pick projects that work for you, that you know work for the tools that you're going to use. If you already know you're going to use OpenSocial or basically every distribution in Drupal, then you already kind of have to know where are the boundaries, how far can I bend it, how far can I customize it before it will break. And does that work still for the project? So we have, for example, some use cases where clients come to us with like ready to go designs where we weren't involved in the design process, which is very hard then to fit to a distribution, and oftentimes lead to problems in the later stages, especially in the maintenance and handoff, where you want to have a strong product, because from a business perspective, this is where you can really profit. So really set it up good, set the boundary in sales, how far you want to go, what you want to do, which client wishes you can achieve and which you cannot achieve, and be transparent about it. A bit to that, also in the later stage of the first meetings and setups, like understand your client. I think that ties a bit into what I just said, like make sure you know their target group, make sure you know their overall goals, and what they want to achieve with the product. I mean, you are the tech experts here. They hired you for a reason, and not just to build what they say, but also to lead them through the process here. And the second part I also quickly touched already, that you have to understand your toolbox. So if it's now that you acquire a project and then you choose the distribution, or the other way around, no matter how, you have to understand, as I said, where are the boundaries, how far can I go, where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, what kind of modules does it use, which other modules would be interesting in, for this project. And a fourth point is a bit something that we just learned from practice, is that starting workshop to implement this is super important. So there you can build like a foundation for later moments where you have difficult situations in a project, where you have to make hard calls, where you have to convince them, and just with a face-to-face workshop, that's the best way to establish this connection. And obviously, we work very digital. We work very much distributed all around the world. We have clients all around the world, in New York, in Australia, in Oslo. We have different offices where people work. So we are used to have like a digital and online communication, but still, like those workshops we do at the beginning, they always pay off in any case. So I want to go a bit deeper into like one of the points I mentioned with understand your clients. And so, as I said, this is the of a project, especially if you're going into something complex as communities, because a community is not just a marketing tool or anything, but you need to understand the goals, the values, and the roles of the users to determine which product features you want to have. So, as I said, we have around, I'm not sure, I think it's like an 80 or 90 different features only on a top level that we can enable or cannot enable for certain clients. And to understand that there's no way you will be able to teach them in a 2-hour workshop or with an Excel sheet what they can enable and what they can achieve with our product. So you have to be the guide in that, but for that you need to understand what does the client want and where does he want to come out. And not only like, oh, he wants events, but why does he want the event? like go really to the root of it, understand like what does he want to achieve with the events, and not he as a company or as the managers who decided that this is the way to go, but also what does they want that the user does on the platform, what specific action they want them to perform, and what they want to benefit from, how they want to benefit them from the community. So all of those are very important cornerstones of finding like the right flows, the right setups, and the right tools and features for a community. So some guidelines during the implementation that we just learned from our personal experience is constantly evaluate the client needs versus the user needs. As I said, it's not only important what the managers want with this platform. That might be the initial point where they decided like, oh, we want to have a community where we can make our brand strategy. But to make a successful community, you need actually deliver value to the user, not to the manager who purchases the product, right? So don't be afraid to push against it, and don't be afraid to also fight for the right of the user. I think that's an obligation that you have as a development team and as an implementation team to deploy your own expertise as implementation partner and say, I think from a user perspective, from the evaluation we did, from the goals you want to reach, this would be the better way from a technical perspective also, like argue for that. And use the community, as I said before, and not this community, but I mean the Drupal community in general. There are so many great modules, there are so many great people working there, and like don't try to reinvent the wheel. Our first goal is always to look what do other people do, and also how can we give to that. So for example, I don't want to go too deep into that now, but I think that's very important to always keep in mind, like work with the community, work with the tools that Drupal gives you, and also give back in the end if you did something. So we are also always as a company open to that, and we have a lot of meetings with other companies deploying OpenSocial because we want to be the success, and we want to, we come like from an open source background and strongly believe in it. And the last point is something that we see more often, especially in the implementations that we didn't do, but also in our first implementations, basically work with the distro and not against it. So that is very important. It counts for theming, it counts for the way it is implemented, but look really deep into it and see, like, try to understand how the people that created the distribution intended it, and try to work in the spirit of this intention and not like your own way and say like, oh, it's stupid that they do not create different content types but use topic types as a taxonomy or anything, and then just do your own, because in the end you'll not profit from that, and in the end you will just break basically your platform. And again, that ties also into the point I mentioned before, that the biggest profit of like distributions and about those community projects is that you create a tool that people can use for months or even years. And you can also profit business-wise from a company, as a company, from that by doing the maintenance, by doing updates. Distributions are heavily maintained. They're like always updated. New features are added to the distribution. And if you create a strong, stable product that stays updatable, that you can maintain with ease, you can deliver continuous profit and continuous value to your clients and build a long-lasting business relationship with them. So not only go for the one-off here, but also for the overall value of a community. Okay, so how did we implement that for specific projects? I'm going to show like 3 examples. I think I have to cut a bit on a few of them. If you have any more questions about any of the projects or any other thing that we do, you can contact me. I also left some contact details in the sheets. The first one's going to be the crowd innovation module for Voraus. That's a partner of ours, and I will show on the hand of that how we actually develop new features with clients together to fit their specific needs, as I said. The second one will be like building a franchise with Greenpeace. So as I said, we started with Greenpeace. It's a bit full circle now because Greenpeace will come to OpenSocial now, and we will build 16 NROs with them together. National regional organizations, so 16 different countries will have OpenSocial community platforms. And the last one will be the UN project. So we work for the UN, and basically it's about finding your niche and how to go into certain verticals. So the first one is an example of for Voraus. That's a Swiss think tank who is doing like grassroots politic discussions, and they already do real life workshops with people over 2 days since years, where people come together, discuss policies, vote on certain ideas, and the winning idea of those workshops will be actually presented on conferences or in front of the parliament or anything like this. And they came to, via another partner to us, and wanted to digitalize this process. So what we did here is we then sat down with them in a workshop, worked out what the features is, what the requirements are, tried to and implemented this in OpenSocial. So what came out is a crowd innovation feature, which basically does the same as their real-life workshops, but on an online, in an online guided process to find the best ideas. I don't want to go too much into the details of the actual feature. There is, you probably can download the slides if you're really interested in how we come to this and what the features are. But more the lessons from it is that we basically took a community, the core of community platform, implemented this in a completely new feature that opened a whole new vertical, which is this innovation vertical. There's like a lot of potential in that. There are a lot of companies that are searching for tools that can go into this. And we built a complete extension for that, which you can now enable and like send the community, the simple core community that we have, into a certain direction, into a certain vertical, this crowd innovation vertical, and completely change how people interact with OpenSocial, with the distribution, and what the end goal of this community is. So it's in those crowd innovation communities are not only about connecting people, but like really generating knowledge from the community that you built before. As its core, it's still the community, it's still connecting people, but end goal of the community is something different, and we achieved that kind of with like one whole separate extension that you can now enable with it. And there are a few extensions that we did like this. So basically you have to imagine it like the core bubble, and onto that you can add like different bubbles that expand on this and help really specify the community to the needs and to the vertical the client is moving in. Another value is for that, how we did it is with the extension setup, that you basically generate value not only for this specific client, but for you as a company and for everyone who's using the distribution. Because it's not a one-off customization we did for a client, but we added a whole new set of tools to the toolbox that OpenSocial is. That's, as I said, that's how it looks like, by the way. So you see the different phases, the different approaches. There are like you can follow it, you can send in ideas, and then you can vote on the ideas, and it's funneled down to the best idea. So another point is like building a franchise for Greenpeace, like creating the maximum value of your distribution. And there, for example, it's a very good example of what I said, the business value that you can generate with it, and the value you can create by multiplying communities. So we set up and determined with Greenpeace International like what they want, what features they need, how do they use it, how do they intend to use it, really drill down to the core goals of the community and develop a concept for them that we're now replicating with different NROs, with slight customizations again per NRO, because every country is different and every national regional organization is different. So we're still adapting it, but in general we have a ready-to-go project that we can set up and replicate and replicate and replicate. So only this year we will set up 16 different communities this way that we will maintain hopefully for the next few years. Yeah, so that's a very good thing, and I think it's applicable to the most distributions because you have this core set of features, you have these boundaries that you can work with, and it's like the value of replicating those projects is very high. That's how, for example, Greenpeace Germany, the first one we launched, so how it looks like with OpenSocial. So it's also a bit of a different look and feel, which is also important in the way of customization, that you can adapt the look and feel, the style, and the flows of the community. And then to the last point, so niche projects, so vertical and build for it. I already mentioned vertical, so basically the area you're moving in, the goal you have with a certain community, and the target group you're reaching with it. And so for us, a very good example here is the United Nations, where we have very different, actually, goals of the different communities we built for them. I think it's now 8 different communities we did, and every time it's a whole new process, and it's not like Greenpeace that we replicate just one project, but we know now still about the target group, we know where they are moving, we know the space they are working in with, and that helps us, like this core understanding of a certain niche and a certain vertical helps us to create really good customized platform that fit their needs and that help achieve their goal. So I have a few examples here that do also look very different. So this, for example, is for crisis prevention, and it needs like a very visual front, and it's almost like newspapers or something like this. So there the information value is in the front, and not so much the community. The community is in the background there a bit. This is a discussion platform where the community is absolute in the front, and where we only having the community discussions on this platform, not so much visual, not that big pictures, but still the core, the target group, and the people using it are still the same, and we can profit from that knowledge we have from former projects, and also again from the features that we have. So we built a few modules for them. I don't have the time to go too deep into it, but we built a few features for that niche because we saw that there is a demand, we saw that there's a value for it, and we built a few, like the course module, for example, that has guided step-by-step processes where people can have a learning experience on a community platform with the community in the backend. And this is something that's very important for the United Nations because they are very knowledge-based. So this target group, this niche of ours is very knowledge-based. They have a lot of content to share, and they do want to share it, but they also want to have the interaction. So that's, again, where the community comes into play. So the course module is one of the things that we developed for them. Another part is the resource library. So as I said, as it's very knowledge-based, we needed to find something where we have where we can show the right content in the right context, as I mentioned before, and this is like how we do it with a different array of filters that we adapt per project because they have different taxonomies, they have different topics, topic types, topic regions, areas, whatever they want to filter on per project, but the general framework stays always the same, that we then adapt to the specific content and specific wishes to the client. So a few takeaways here is have a long-term strategy with the client and the tool. As I mentioned in the first part, in the second part, this is very important, and it gives a lot of value to your company and to your client and to the end users. Develop that strategy at the beginning, fight for the strategy during the implementation, and also help them when new features come to distribution. How do they fit into the general concept and to the strategy that you have? So empower the organizations with an open platform and build their own to build their own community. I think that's a very important point that I made at the beginning of the presentation, that we try to have a community where the users and the site managers can decide how it looks like, that they can also customize it, not only we as an implementation partner, that also they have constantly the freedom to decide specifics as for the event features. We provide them with the opportunities to it, but how it's implemented and what the specifics of the implementation are, they decide during the creation of the community. And lastly, design for the specifics of your target group. So that's something I mentioned in the last point of the presentation, that you really want to know your target group, know your clients, know your tools, and then develop for it, give back to the community, and yeah, ideally profit in the long term from it. Any questions?
Thank you. So often in the Drupal community, it's said that you know, when there's a new project, developers look at the distribution. They're like, oh, the distribution is too much. We're gonna develop it ourselves because, you know, it gives us more work and more control over the project. Where is this line, if it can be decided when to use a distribution and when to start from scratch? What's your view on that?
Okay, yeah, interesting question, difficult question also, because as I said, that totally depends also on the preset how you go into a project. If you have a very tight concept that your client already has determined for you, if you have a preset design, if you have like a really structured approach, then it might get harder to use a distribution because, as I said, you need to stay in those boundaries of the distribution. So I think the most important part is that you can work on a eye-to-eye level with your client, and that you have the right also to determine with them together how the flow, how the precise setup of the project will look like, and that you keep the agency over the technical decision. I think that's a very, very important point. If you have that, then I think most distribution only give value to your project, because a lot of smart people already work for it mostly for years to improve it, and how could you do that in a few months with probably a very limited budget?
Okay, so let me thank our guest and give him a special diploma.